Hello there, time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are ESPN's James Olley and Paul McInnes from The Guardian. Welcome to you both. Let me run you through the back pages before we discuss. We'll start with The Express. Gay or bust, their main headline. Jamie Carragher, the Liverpool legend, says that the team need a centre-back in the January transfer window. Similar story in the Daily Star as well. Mark my words, after Liverpool missed out on Mark Gay in the last window, will they make another bid in the winter window? How about this in the Metro? Carries quotes from former footballer Ian Wright about Jude Bellingham, which we will come to in this show. Some people aren't ready for a black superstar, says Wright. The Sun says Martin Odegaard is set to return for this weekend's North London derby between Arsenal and Spurs, with Rando Kolo Muani set to play in a mask. The Telegraph report on US company Paramount winning the rights to broadcast the Champions League, coupled with Sky winning the rights to show the Europa and Conference League from 2027. And similar story in The Guardian as well, reporting on that same broadcast deal news. OK, let's start with Liverpool and Mark Gay and the possibility that they do need a centre-back, as said by Jamie Carragher. He obviously knows the team very well, but then so does Arne Slot. James, do you feel as though, with all that Liverpool has going on and the fact that they spent close to 450 million in the last window, will they be looking for a centre-back? Could it be Mark Gay?
Well, the short answer to that is yes and yes. I think this was a deal they tried to get over the line in the summer. Obviously, it didn't happen. I think the interest is still there. I think Palace have probably got to a point where they know they're going to lose him for nothing next summer. I think Mark Gay has been pretty consistent all the way down the line that he's not going to sign a new deal there. While being, I think, very respectful of the club that he plays for and the situation that he found himself in come, the start of September, when I think most people probably thought that deal would eventually get over the line, and obviously it didn't. But he's knuckled down. He's played consistently well for club and country, and I think it's one that Liverpool know they have to revisit in January, because they're short at centre back, as Jamie Carragher said. They're one injury away from a real crisis in that position. And let's be honest, it's not as if they've defended particularly well, even with the players they do currently have. So I think it's pretty clear that they need the player. I think it's pretty clear the player wants to go, and it's pretty clear that Palace need to get some kind of money in before they lose him for nothing next summer. So I think it's a deal that will suit everyone. Whether it happens early or late in January, it's hard to say, but I think it will happen.
Paul, is this Liverpool's biggest positional problem, do you think?
It's certainly the most striking one in that I think James is right. The numbers are thin on the ground, and more than that, players are out of form. Not only is Ibu Konate not nearly the player of last season, we've seen that sort of Virgil van Dijk's performances have started to drop off as well. Joe Gomez, while a long-standing servant and obviously trusted by the club more broadly, I don't think they see him as a regular starting centre half. So yeah, they're limited there. But I think the club has a problem in other positions too. It hasn't really worked out the best combination for its new signings, which they spent £500 million on. And we've also seen a drop-off in other areas of the field too, but particularly strikingly in the case of Mohamed Salah. But I think the real question for Liverpool is that they're trying to change their style this season. They're trying to be more expansive, more dominant, and score more goals. And that is leaving them more open, especially in the Premier League, which has become more direct, more reliant on set pieces. Liverpool have gone more technical. And I think that's a bigger issue than one player is going to be able to solve. And while I completely understand that it's a deal that could well be done in January, I think Crystal Palace's need to sell is quite great. And I'm pretty sure that Mark Gahey will have a number of offers from across the continent with probably decent wages attached, should he choose to sign a free transfer deal, which he can do abroad from January too.
Okay, from one England player to another, let's talk Jude Bellingham. He's never far from the headlines. We discuss him constantly here on Back Pages tonight, and he's in the headlines again because the former Arsenal striker Ian Wright has been talking on a podcast, and you can see the headline there from the Metro. Some people aren't ready for a black superstar. It seems that Ian Wright is saying that, yes, Jude Bellingham is a generational talent. He's also outspoken. He's also very confident. And whilst other players also exhibit those characteristics, because Jude Bellingham is black, some people might view him differently when he exhibits those particular characteristics. So, James, I suppose the question is, do you feel the criticism that's been around Bellingham over the last few months is justified, or has it overstepped the mark somewhat?
Well, this is obviously a very complicated issue. I think first and foremost, Jude Bellingham is in the headlines because England manager Thomas Tuchel dropped him from the squad. He then brought him back, and obviously the precursor to that was the fact that he chose in a radio interview to use the word repulsive when describing elements of his behaviour. Jude Bellingham is a fantastically gifted footballer. We all know that. Any England fan wants him to do well. But it's also been reported in a number of credible areas that he has created a bit of an issue within the England squad, perhaps towards the end of Gareth Southgate's time. And the way that Thomas Tuchel's spoken about Jude Bellingham, and I've been in most of those press conferences and those briefings, he has fielded every question, and that is to his credit. But he's talked a lot about culture and about team spirit, and he justified leaving him out last month by saying the group that I had, the team spirit has never been better. And when there's this conversation going on in the background about Jude Bellingham, it doesn't take a genius to put two and two together and see what he's talking about. Now, that's one aspect of it. And I think if that's being reported sort of fairly and factually, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Where I can see Ian Wright's argument, at least in terms of whether Jude Bellingham has been singled out for special treatment, is if that then is taken into day after day of focus on Jude Bellingham, and maybe when the story has naturally kind of run its course, there are outlets that are continuing to write about him consistently and prominently. But I sincerely hope that that's not anything to do with race. I hope that's more to do with his profile, the interest in him as a player, and the fact that the England manager, Thomas Tuchel, has spoken about him so often and responded to every question that he's been asked.
Yeah, it is a tough subject to talk about, particularly when race is so intertwined in British society, Paul. But what's your feeling on the way Tuchel has handled this, and perhaps has he mismanaged it? Could he have protected Bellingham more from this criticism?
Yeah, another middle-aged white guy weighing in here. I think Tuchel, he was asked this question, which I think a lot of this discussion and a lot of the debate has hung on this word. I think if he hadn't said repulsive, I think a lot of the coverage wouldn't have followed. It sort of gave license to some stuff. And I think he was asked in a post-match interview, and it wasn't a pre-prepared remark, and he was speaking in his second language. And I think if he'd have chosen, instead of saying repulsive, he was talking about how his body language, his remonstrations can be off-putting to people when they're watching them. He was describing his mother seeing this and saying that she didn't like this. And I think if he'd said off-putting rather than repulsive, we'd be having a very different conversation. And I think, like James says, it's to Tuchel's credit that he tries to front up to these questions, all questions about himself as well, and his approach, and his relationship to the England job. And I think he's trying to be honest and upfront and frank. And so I think it's been a bit invidious, the position he's found himself in. I feel like after the Albania game, where he was substituted and he was unhappy at being substituted, which is a commonplace thing with players of any ability, never mind the La Liga's Player of the Year and a runner-up in the Golden Boot from 2 seasons ago. He was asked about this afterwards, and he was, I think he tried to move it back onto the talking point that he wants to talk about, which is culture and being supportive of each other. And I think, that's the right point to make. And I can completely understand that if Bellingham's not there, he's a dominant character, and that maybe there are other characters in the squad who feel intimidated by that, and it does change the dynamic. But when Ian Wright talks, I try and listen. He's had experiences that I haven't had, many people haven't had, and many people wouldn't want to have. And I think it's important that we listen to what he's saying, and we consider the possible impacts of that, and the impact on Jude.
Yeah. Totally. What you want, essentially, isn't it, is all players in that England squad being given fair and equal treatment. OK, staying with the theme of the World Cup, because we have had the World Cup draw. Going to the back of the Express on the right-hand side sidebar, Italy loom in tough playoffs. So we've got a home draw for Wales. They're playing Bosnia and Herzegovina. Northern Ireland have to travel to the 4 times World Cup champions Italy. And then the Republic of Ireland will be away to the Czech Republic. James, I think I might know what you're going to say. Who do you think's got the toughest draw of those 3?
Well, the only thing to say about Northern Ireland is that, the pressure on Italy is absolutely immense. I mean, they've obviously missed out on the last couple of World Cups. And if that was to happen again, I mean, this is a country so passionate about its football, they will expect, the flip side, of course, is as we look at it as a tough draw for Northern Ireland, Italy will be thinking that, they've almost got one foot in the finals, that they should be there, that that's their rightful home, that's where they should be. And that's something that, Northern Ireland can play to. They can play on that nervousness and that tension and those sort of problems that the Italian players are going to feel, that pressure on their shoulders. I mean, look, from a Wales point of view, I mean, fantastic for them that they've got 2 home draws. I think every playoff they've had has been at home, which is quite lucky because, of course, it literally was the luck of the draw for them. And we know at home in particular what a fantastic atmosphere they can create, what an intimidating proposition they'll be for any team that has to go there. And yeah, I mean, look, the Republic of Ireland, obviously the Czech Republic, again, that will look winnable to them. So, look, I mean, we saw with Scotland how amazing that was, what a great night that was. And obviously Wales have got 1, maybe 2 of those nights ahead of them, something similar.
Yeah, and if Wales get past Bosnia and Northern Ireland get past Italy, they are on a collision course to face each other in the finals. What a matchup that could be. James, Paul, for the moment, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be looking at more sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this on the North London derby in the Sun. Marvels, they say. Superhero Odegaard back as Kolo Muani plays in a mask. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to ESPN's James Ollie and Paul McGuinness from The Guardian. Let's go straight to The Telegraph. And their headline, Paramount beats TNT Sports to £4 billion Champions League. Massive deal this, James.
Yeah, it is a significant blow, of course, for TNT. But I mean, it just shows sort of the US interest that there is. I speak as somebody who works for an American broadcaster here, so I suppose I'm a little bit biased. But I think it just sort of speaks to what's happening in the States with obviously the World Cup going there next summer and just the level of interest and the excitement that there is there. And really what I think Paramount have done is capitalise on what they see as an opportunity, that it's a growing market in the US and obviously they can get the rights here, they can establish themselves here in the UK and what better way to do it than through the football.
Yeah. OK, let's switch to the Premier League now. It is fast approaching once again after the international break. And one of the ties of this round, the North London derby, Arsenal hosting Tottenham. Back page of The Sun, they've gone with the headline, Marvels, superhero Odegaard back as Kolo Muani plays in a mask. Paul, this is a big boost for Arsenal to have their captain back, particularly after the international break. We've seen Gabriel, one of their key defenders, go down and will miss a few weeks of the season.
Yeah, you can tell it's a big game when news of a player wearing a mask makes it onto the back page. But yeah, I mean, it's true. My concern for would be that Odegaard has been rushed back before and has been as his return has been short-lived as a result. And I also think he's a player who can take a little bit of time to hit his stride and coming back into the side. Clearly, it will be a boost. But Arsenal have been functioning, efficiently, consistently throughout this season. Yeah, they've come off the back of a 2-2 draw at Sunderland, but Sunderland are working little miracles up on Weir side at the minute. So, there was no shame in that defeat. I think it's a boost for Arsenal, but I don't think it's something. In fact, I think it's a sign of where they are this season. Actually, that they don't really need to kind of rip up the plans. Make sure they can accommodate Odegaard at any cost. If he's good enough to come back and sit on the bench and maybe give 30 minutes, I think that will work for them too. They've got a big, capable squad now with a lot of players who've hit the ground running. Recruitment that's immediately worked in contrast to Liverpool, like we were talking about earlier. So I think they'll be feeling good with or without Odegaard in the side. As for Spurs, I think, Kolo Muani has looked like their best striking option. Richarlison's had some streaks with goals, but Muani looks like he can offer a goal threat, drop deep, also pull wide. He's a flexible forward. And, I think that it's good news that he'll be fit for Spurs. I think Thomas Frank will almost certainly have a plan for this game. They'll try and play it tight. They'll try and be cagey. They'll try and be effective in their own way on set pieces. So it's a very interesting clash, and all these sorts of little pieces of detail that we're getting ahead of the game, I think, only heighten the anticipation.
Yeah, it will be an intriguing matchup, won't it? OK, we're going to stay with the back page of The Sun. On the left-hand sidebar, Ivan, £14 million dilemma. An exclusive here from Martin Lipton saying that Ivan Toney faces a £14 million dilemma if he wants to rekindle his World Cup dream. This is apparently the figure that he would have to almost relinquish in taxes if he's to make a move to the Premier League to try and get a spot on the plane for the World Cup for England. James, I mean, what do you make of this story, first of all? And £14 million, is it worth it to play for your country?
Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, Thomas Tuchel's been talking recently, obviously, the international break we just had, that, the sort of backup spot to Harry Kane has not been nailed down by anyone. He was quite at pains to sort of suggest that although he tried Phil Foden as a false nine, that's not his go-to plan B. Ollie Watkins has been in and out of the squad. He's talked about Danny Welbeck, but will he really bring Danny Welbeck in? He's not played for England for, I think it's about 7 years, and he's obviously getting on in age. whether he thinks about Ivan Toney and maybe whether they speak and he sort of says, look, you need to come back and play in the Premier League or play in Europe and show me that you can do it and there's a spot open for you. That could be the deal breaker for him. I mean, it's always the question, isn't it? When players go out to Saudi Arabia, are they going out for the money? They'll say they're going out for the experience, but really is it the cash that's bringing them out there? And it's sort of the same question now, isn't it? Is that does Ivan Toney want to sacrifice what's obviously a huge amount of money, a life-changing amount of money, to try and resurrect his career with England and in Europe? And I suppose he decided that the money and the opportunity to go out there was important to him when he left Brentford. If he feels it's not worked out for him, I'm sure there'll be several clubs queuing up for him because we all know how good he is in the Premier League. We know how effective he can be, and there is a shortage of those sort of number nines who can really lead the line in the way that Ivan Toney can. So I imagine if he signals that he wants to come back and that he's prepared to sacrifice that kind of money, he will not be short of suitors in January.
Feels like an opportunity for him, Paul, because he knows that there's positions still up for grabs. Thomas Tuchel has made the point that he's going around to 60-odd players to talk to them as to why they're not in the squad. So he's got this opportunity if he comes back to the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see what's happened with Jordan Henderson. He's come back to England via Amsterdam. He's picked the right team, Brentford, a team that had a very clear role that they wanted him to play. He's hit the ground running. He's having a whale of a time playing for them at the minute, and he's back in the England squad and looks very comfortable there as a Declan Rice understudy's not the right word for a Champions League captain, but you know what I mean. He will play. He will be there when Declan Rice is tired and perhaps in some group games. I think it is a real question of jeopardy though, because what if Ivan Toney decides that he does want to come back, which I suspect would upset his employers in Saudi Arabia if he did do that. They're quite keen to keep hold of him, and he comes back and say Liam Delap goes on a tear for Chelsea, which hasn't happened yet but could, and he doesn't get that place. He could have lost a lot of money, a bit of prestige, blocked off one avenue for his career and not got the place. So it is something he has to weigh up. But I think, don't underestimate the pull of the three lions for players. It's, it is pride, it's playing for your country, but it's also a kind of achievement in your career that you can't get in the club game. It sort of stands apart from that. And I think it does matter a lot to players to be able to play in a World Cup. Ivan Toney hasn't done that yet. I think it would be something that he would be very keen on doing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you look at his age being 29, he knows these opportunities are going to be few and far between. OK, let's turn our attentions now to the back of this sport. And they've covered, the Daily Star, and they've covered Birmingham's new mock-up stadium that they've been announcing. Come on, you Flues, they say, is the headline. It's a remarkable image at the top of the page there, isn't it? There's so many new stadiums popping up in the footballing world, James, and they all kind of look a little bit similar, really. This one definitely doesn't. 12 chimneys involved in this one. It's remarkable.
Well, I mean, I like the sort of nod to obviously the city's industrial heritage, but yeah. I'm reading this story. I noticed they say, this stadium can be seen from 40 miles away, which was something that when Manchester United unveiled their new Trafford, that was another sort of selling point. Oh, you can see it from, miles and miles away. I've never known a football fan talk about how pleased they are that their stadium can be seen from miles away. That to me is not an important factor in this. But every sort of designer these days seems to sort of say, what's really important, that this stadium can be seen from a long way off. What they want really is a good atmosphere, an intimidating place to go, state-of-the-art facilities. Basically the sort of Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, really, what that's done and sort of set a benchmark at club level in this country is to try and replicate that. It's sort of fantastic arena, although admittedly Spurs have a dreadful record there, so that doesn't always translate to performance, I suppose. But yeah, I think they're talking for 2031, so it's a relatively quick turnaround to try and produce a stadium build of that quality. But these plans are always very ambitious at the start. Whether they can complete them remains to be seen. But I quite like it in the sense of there's, as I say, a nod to the heritage of the city.
Yeah, 40 miles away it could be seen from. I remember when they did the Millennium Dome, they said it could be seen from the moon. Incredible. James Ollie, Paul McInnes, thank you very much for joining us on Back Pages. Great to have your company. If you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see it at hour. The show is also available as a podcast. As always, just download Back Pages or Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can join us again on Friday night, where our guests will be Ian Ladyman and John Cross. Coming next here on Sky Sports News, Arne Slot says the pressure will continue on his Liverpool side until they string together more wins. Stay with us, we'll hear from him next.